Hello, everyone, good people. I want to welcome you all to another exciting episode of the Changemaker Table, the podcast where we sit down with inspiring individuals who are making a difference in their field and in their communities. I'm your host, Lois Castillo, and today we have a truly remarkable guest joining us. I'm excited and over the moon and nervous because he is just a force. He's a creative leader with a passion for sharing knowledge and experience to empower creative communities. He is the co-host of the popular podcast Mixed Company and a force, as I said, to be reckoned with within the creative world. So please join me in welcoming one and only Simeon Coker.
How you doing?
Hi. I'm so excited that you're here and you said yes. And for those of most may not know, me and Simeon met almost a year ago in this amazing leadership program that we had the honor of being. So I was a super fan of your work and you and just hearing the impact you've had even before meeting you, but to be in that room with you for 2 days was life-changing.
It was life changing for me too. I think it was one of those moments where I was fanboying because I felt like everybody in the room was doing amazing things. And so it was like a moment where I got to pat myself on the back because the work that I was doing put me in the same space as people like you. Yeah. Honored to be here. Honored to say things, hopefully that are inspiring and make them change something in their lives.
You always do. I've never been in a room and never heard you speak that you have not left profound words on me or individuals. So let's dive into this. And can we start off by sharing a little bit about yourself, but also share a pivotal moment that ignited your passion for creativity and just set you on this path in this amazing industry we call
Oh,
creative?
wow. Pivotal moment. I'm from Brooklyn, born and raised. I think as long as I can remember myself, I was always drawing and writing. I think a moment where my brain was like, yeah, you could probably do something with this was in junior high. Our English teacher gave us an assignment to write poems around like Valentine's Day. And everybody was like, this is trash. I'm not doing it. And he was like, you're going to get a failing grade. And I was like, I'll do it if you give me money. And I wrote a bunch of poems for people and they were all dope. They all got good grades. And I was like, I could probably make some money off of this because I just made some money off of it. So I would say that's probably a moment that stands out. My dad's Nigerian, so he doesn't really, or she didn't believe in creative careers at that point. But that was a moment for me where I was like, okay, this is something that I could potentially do. And I don't think I've ever really looked back since then. I've never wanted a job that didn't require some sort of creative thinking or imagination.
Oh, I love that. I love the hustle in junior high. Like, I'll do it. But you got to put money talk. Yeah, I'm going to monetize my skills. That's amazing. That's such
Like after school, it's expensive. You got to get pizza.
yes. Some junior high lunches it was expensive. So thinking about you can do it, and you mentioned a little bit about I can make this happen. Can you share just even as we delve in, how did you even take that path to get into this industry? Because there's so many ways of creativity in the advertising that you can enter.
Yeah. So I actually started my career in media sales. I stumbled into it. I went away to college, came back after a semester because I wasn't feeling it. And I got a job with the cable company here in the tri-state. And when I took the job, my parents were like, look, I don't know what you're doing, but you can't live here unless you are in school or working. And so I took the job. But one of the things that gravitated me toward it was the recruiter was like, hey, if you work here, you can go anywhere. And I want to break down all of the different places where you can go. And she mentioned media. And I was taking a bunch of mass communication courses. And when I went away to college, I had shared one of the first complex magazines with my guidance counselor. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And he was like, dude, I don't know how to help you. You just have to figure it out. And so I ended up in media after taking this customer service job with the cable company. And that sort of really kicked off everything because I wasn't on the creative side, but I was working with creative people. I was working with agencies. I started as an assistant and ended up as an account executive and then platform manager. And while I was there, I started to transition over to the marketing team. And I was like, you know what? This is where I'm supposed to be. Like everyone who was on that team kept saying, oh, you're the creative person. You're the person who's supposed to be doing this. You're the person who's supposed to be doing this. And it made me go back to school and with a focus of advertising. And I was like, okay, this is exactly where I want to be. I didn't know exactly how to do it. There weren't a lot of people around me who were who were in advertising proper in the creative space. But I met my advisor, Nancy Tagg, who is the head of the communications program at City College. And she connected me with Tiffany Edwards, who was the head of diversity at the One Club at the time. And that kind of just sparked everything because Tiffany had created, and if you don't know Tiffany Edwards, like people go look at her because a lot of the programs that have been extremely influential in people's careers within this industry, especially if you're Black, brown, person of color, marginalized, she's created a lot of them. And so she created the Creative Boot Camp with the One Club. And it was a week long. You get a brief, they pair you with a team, and you work on this brief for a week. And then you present your campaign to a bunch of creative leaders. And we didn't win the first year, but I remember Shamika Brown, who was on the panel, looked at me and she was like, dude, this is really hard. You're really good at what you just did, and you need to be doing this. And I was like, okay, cool. Didn't win. And when I was leaving, I told Tiffany, I was like, look, you need to do this again next year, because if you do it again next year, I'm gonna win it.
Oh, wow.
And came up next year and I won it. It's
That's
like, okay, so here we are. We're gonna do this. It was an uphill battle because I didn't go to portfolio school, but I knew that I was good enough to do it. And that made me keep pushing my way into the industry.
I love that story. It's funny. I started my career at boot camp. They hosted one in Chicago.
Hey.
So I did not know Tiffany Edwards was one of the founders. So shout out to her because she is the reason I am here. So when we think about your story, it's so parallels around how, especially Black and brown folks, we get into this advertising industry and not knowing. And you mentioned earlier on, like your dad was like, "Yeah, we're not paying to be like that's not. You want to be something else? We'll figure this out, but you
Uh,
can't be just chilling in our house."
because nobody, what's a creative director to somebody, or what does a creative industry look like to someone who's only ever pursued engineering, math,
Yeah,
professional. But now I think we're in a space where I think after he saw me working in it, he was like, oh, okay, you're actually making real money. Okay, this is okay.
yeah. Because they hear creative and they think starving artists. Like you're gonna be in my
Um,
basement forever. They're like, that's not what we invested in. So one of the things you're known for, I want to take a turn, is sharing knowledge and empowering people with information. Can you share a moment where you, from your creative career, that shaped your passion for helping others navigate? What was that moment that was like, I gotta share?
Ooh. The thing that comes to mind is we both know Nisha Tweed Bell. She's a really good friend of mine. I met Nisha after a interesting moment. I was at an event that Tiffany put together called We're All the Black People. And now turned into a big conference. But at that point, it was just a panel, I believe, during advertising week. And they were talking about why they can't find Black people to hire in the creative space. And after everyone finished speaking, I don't want to say I lost my shit, but maybe just a little bit, where I stood up and I was like, man, this is all BS. Like everything that you're saying makes no sense. And I think that it's a missed opportunity for a creative industry that is built to solve business problems to shirk responsibility on this business problem, because this is a business problem. Because if you don't have us in the room, then you're not going to be able to connect with diverse audiences, and we are a growing population within spending communities. And after that event, I was really, I would say, embarrassed, because I'm not a person who, like, one, raises my voice, two, loses my composure. Like, that is the brand. And so someone introduced me to Nisha at a bar. I don't think she was at that event. And she just started pouring into me. Like, it became like our thing where she was like, you don't need to worry about that. As long as you're good, you will get hired. And since that moment, Nisha's given me so many gems in my
Is
career.
amazing.
I've always felt that whatever somebody gives me, I need to pass them on. That has just been my life. Like, people have helped me throughout my career from day one when they didn't need to. And so it felt like this was the way that I had to pay that back, which is anything that someone gives to me, I need to pass it along to someone else because I know how transformative it was in my life and in the trajectory of my career.
That's beautiful. I think the fact that you had Nisha and someone to pour into you and was like, it's my job to pour into others. Cause sometimes people will just will take and let their cup full, but not fill others' cups. I think that is the beauty of what you do and who you are and how you show up. And I would be very nervous if I saw you go off 'cause that is not who you are.
Well,
But I think it probably was warranted in that space because that
yeah,
is a frustration of ours when they
yeah,
act as if we don't exist or you can't
yeah.
find us.
I mentioned I'm from Brooklyn, so like hip hop is such a like influential force in my existence. And when I think about hip hop, like when somebody gets put on, the whole clique gets put on. Like that's how BT Awards back in the day,
Yeah.
everybody's on stage. It's Wu-Tang, right? So I look at this career that way because we are in a creative space. This is a team environment. Like none of us work alone. It doesn't matter if you're a freelancer or if you're full time. And so it feels wrong to keep information inside that can better the process, better the output, better the product, better the industry. And so it feels like my duty in some ways, my responsibility to pass along whatever information I've been given. And Nisha's just one of many who, and a lot of times in my career, I'm like, why is this person telling me this? You don't need to. I don't know why you asked me out to brunch. This is weird. But people have seen things in me where they're like, I need to give this to you for whatever reason. I'm sure at some point I'll figure out those reasons. And it felt like it was my duty to pass it along. And I think the most rewarding thing in my career outside of the work that I've created has been seeing other people bubble up and pass me. Honestly, that to me feels like real power. And one of the early episodes of the podcast, Karina and I were talking about money, power, respect, because that was this big song, but we internalized it. It was like, this is what we want. But if you want it, like, how do you like wield that power? How do you wield that respect? And passing along the gems feels like one of those ways to like really use your power in a way that is beneficial or makes change. And so I've taken that and it's been the way that I've managed teams. And I think that's another notch on my belt where, pretty much everyone who's ever I've managed is still in my network. Like these are people who still reach out to me. These are people who I still have conversations with because my goal is like, whatever I have, I'm gonna pass it along. If I'm the only one who's winning, that feels weird. That doesn't feel like
That's
just,
not, you're not winning.
you know,
No, you said it so beautifully because I think what I'm hearing you say, Simeon, is information is power.
absolutely.
And I think in our industry, people wield it in such a not positive way and to control. And I think the fact that as people have poured into you and shared information, you share it because power is infinite. And I think that people hoard it. And I think that's what's remarkable is so many of us don't have information or don't know. And I think the fact that you said, if I'm the only one who winning and eating and everybody around me not eating, then that doesn't make sense. It's just not how it should be.
I mean, also too, like when you think about, I did this, there was this Deepak Chopra chain WhatsApp that was going around a couple of years ago. Oh my God, the name just slipped my mind, but it was all about abundance. And at the end of going through this like 21-day meditation, the thing that like really stuck out to me was having a scarcity mindset is really stressful. Like it is a stressful thing to have where you're like, there is only but so much of this thing to go around. The minute that you switch to an abundance mindset, I don't want to say that your life becomes stress free, but you now know that whatever knowledge you have, if you give it out, you're going to get more of it. It's just like,
Yes.
that's the way that you live. Like as long as you're living, you're going to keep collecting knowledge. And so that's how I try to move is through the mindset of abundance. There's enough money, there's enough knowledge, there's enough opportunities to go around for all of us. And even if I don't see it in front of me, the thing that, especially in the last 5 years, no, 8 years, the thing that I've proven to myself over and over, I can create opportunities.
Oh, I
And
love
so
that.
many of the opportunities that I've created for myself have come from sharing knowledge because I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm just like, hey, this is what I know. This is what I think. And they're like, hey, you should meet this person. Oh, you should come in and have a meeting. And so I think that the scarcity mindset sets people back further than they think. They think they're protecting their space, but they're really shutting themselves off to opportunities. And so I look at it and I'm like, whatever I have, you can have it as long as I have time. And that's also why the podcast exists, where I can't talk to everybody. You're right.
No, I was
I
just
can
about to.
talk to everybody. And so like all of it is there to, and as a repository for people to just go back and sift through. So whether you're early in your career, those early episodes where we're extremely frustrated, they go it because the game hasn't changed. We're just in a different era. And so that's giving has been extremely beneficial to me spiritually, but then also career wise because it's come back tenfold.
That. No, I love that. And I was gonna, you taking us there. So let's dive into the podcast. I want, as you know, Simeon, I'm nosy. The name, I know your co-host is amazing. Tell us a little bit. Was y'all just in a room? Was y'all texting and angry? I was like, this is what we need to do. Not angry, because I think that, like you said, the episodes, is so much information in each episode, and it's so uplifting, and it hits you at any moment of your career when you need it.
Yeah.
It's such a safe space that you all have created.
I appreciate that. The name came from or actually the inception of the podcast came from a meeting with Mafa. So Mafa, which actually went off into Coalesce, they are under the Amber. Oh my God, she's gonna fight me because I care. Amber Jackson, who I was also in a development program with IPG, came to me. She's like, "Hey, look, we want to restart Mafa," and I was like, "All right, cool, whatever. Like, I'm down." Kai, who I'd worked with at an agency before, the conversations that Kai and I were having in bars and just chilling, I was like, whatever's happening in this room, I want your insight. I think I'm smart, but I think you're smart. I think you should be in the show. And then Karina, who was also in the development program with Amber and I, they were both in it. And so the first thing that they said, they were like, "Hey, we want to do a podcast." And I was like, "All right, cool. I would like to produce it. I don't want to be on it. I just want to produce it. I want to do all the creative things." And so we get into a room and I convinced Kai to do it because she didn't want to do it initially because the stigma around diversity programs at that time were they were just there to, I don't know.
You don't have to say it. You can say it. We know the stigma.
They weren't feeling effective, if you will.
Yes.
And so Kai was like, "I don't want to do it unless it's going to be something that is change making." And so I was like, "Cool. So I think you should be on the podcast." I finally convinced her. And so we get into a room and they're like, "All right, so what's the name going to be?" And God, look, I don't want to do this unless we're going to keep it real. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, so we should probably call like," oh my God, the phrase literally just flew out of my brain. Like all the things you never say in mixed company, right? So you don't speak freely in mixed company. I was like, so this is our opportunity to do that. We can say all the things that our elders say that we shouldn't say in mixed company because these are the things that are going to harm your career, right? You don't talk about your grievances. You just work harder and you put your head down and you keep it going. But we were feeling the negative effects of that, right? Where it doesn't matter how late we stay, we feel like we're just on this hamster wheel. And so we're like, Kyle was like, "Nah, that's too long, dude. Let's just do mixed company." But the tagline became like, "These are the things you wouldn't say in mixed company." And that became our North Star. And so those early episodes were really an assessment of the lack of impact that we were feeling from diversity programs. And as we progressed in our careers, they became an assessment of, oh, wait, these are all of the missteps that we see in leadership. But then because we are strategists, and I think everybody who works in this industry on the creative side should be considering themselves a strategist, we're like, we can't just get on this podcast and vent. And so at those earlier episodes, at the end of each of them, we called it solution venting. And so by the end of the podcast, after we got everything out of our system, we had to present a solution. And so that became the other thing where I think a lot of people started to gravitate toward it because you felt like you were in a bar, you were venting with your friend, but then at the end, you're walking away with something that you can act on or something that you can consider when you're going into your review or your next meeting or HR or whatever the case may be. And yeah, it started, I think it was real therapy because after like, now that I'm like looking back, I'm like, some of those episodes, I was angry because the things that I was experiencing, and I think the anger came from everything that I was taught as an 80s baby, like coming up, like you just keep your head down. Um,
Yes.
you don't grow out your hair, like you need to be clean cut, and if you say yes, sir, da, 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 you're gonna get far in your career. I'm like, that is not what's happening. So we need to switch it up. But what we started to realize was, or what we knew was that we weren't the only ones who were experiencing it. Everybody was experiencing it. And so I think it became like a group therapy session. It was therapy for me. But the secondary thing that happened is that leaders started to listen because that's the thing about knowledge, right? They don't want clips to read for a reason. Watch things, you can't unknow it. And the word woke has become bastardized, but in a way, that's what was happening is you're waking people up to actually what's happening. Oh, wait, your boss said that to you? Wait, why did they say that to you? Huh,
Yes.
unpack this. All right, you need to start doing something else. And we were having those conversations on the podcast, and those are not the conversations that you're supposed to have in public. And so I think that's why it was so effective. And to pat ourselves on the back, fast forward to 2020, after the whole George Floyd thing was happening, the conversations that were able to be had in public, and I think specifically in our industry where they were extremely candid, extremely raw. I'm going to say that the podcast created space because it wasn't as jarring as it would have been if it was 2010. Because if
Of
you look back
course.
to 2010, for people who were like around, no one was having those conversations.
Of course
The
not.
narrative, if you went to a panel discussion, was, oh my God, what was it? It was somebody said, wait till faint one day. Like that's the way to work. Like it's supposed to like from 9 a.m. until midnight. Like that's like you're supposed to put in those hours. And so the narrative was like work harder, work harder, work harder, work harder, and the things will come. And we were like, nah, you need to work smarter. And if the minute that you start working smarter, things will change. And I think, yeah, things have changed. We've seen progress in the narratives. We've seen progress in the types of programs that exist, the type of strategies, the type of initiatives. And so I think the podcast has been really beneficial, not just to us, but to everybody in the industry who's experiencing a more candid conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
It's so
Okay.
true. I think I no, what you say, it's the truth. I think it allowed space and it allowed to have that and to vent because we have been taught. I'm an 80s baby as well. My mom said, you just go to that good government job, you do your job, you come home. But I also think that the podcast started holding people accountable, even yourselves, when you started
Oh,
to
yeah.
say, hey, we can't just vent, we got to give solutions. And that's a huge, that's impactful. That is
Mm,
what changes. We can all sit and on the
yeah.
phone and complain about what everybody ain't doing, what we should be doing. But when you give people solutions and action items and tools, is where you really start to create the change. I want to switch gears a little bit. And this rapid change at the landscape of creativity, what do you see the biggest challenge for creative are facing today and how can they tackle it?
Biggest challenge. I think the challenge is more of an opportunity because people are more candid about their unique experiences, being a part of a marginalized group, having different experiences. There are a lot, it can feel like a landmine creating that anything that you do can be offensive. I think some people see it as a challenge because the narrative, the public facing narrative is that people are too sensitive. They need to man up or whatever the case may be. I see that as an opportunity where creatives can actually learn more about things that they don't know and people that they're not familiar with and do self-interrogation when they're creating work, especially when you're creating work for the general market, if you will, which consists of all of these people who have been overlooked and marginalized throughout history. And so while some people see it as a challenge, I see it as an opportunity. And so I've been fortunate, especially within the last, I would say 7 years of while I've been working in general market, I've also been working in multicultural or been asked to work on multicultural projects. And so I feel like those have been opportunities for me to actually dig a little bit deeper into what people are feeling, what their histories are, what their backgrounds are to unlock those underutilized truths that people wish were out there, like the representation that people see. So I think It's less of a challenge for me, and I think more of an opportunity. I think where it becomes a challenge is if you're not willing to do the self-interrogation that is required to actually create for people who are not like you. I had a job once where I was literally just on women-centric projects. I am not women. And so there were these moments where I had to do that interrogation. But no, I didn't have. I had to do the interrogation because as a creative, you're supposed to walk into the project with a level of ego, right? Like I know because ultimately you have to pitch. And so I would start working on these projects and then I'll have to catch myself and go, who the hell told you that? Where did you get that from? And so it made me start like asking my homegirls, like, hey, yo, is this real? But that started to unlock really great opportunities for myself and for my clients because now I'm going into a meeting, into a pitch, into an ideation with something that they didn't get from a focus group because that focus group could have been skewed. People go in it, they feel like they need to be smart or they feel like they need to give a polished answer. And I would say it's less of a challenge and more of an opportunity to create exciting work that probably wouldn't exist without a level of self awareness. And so, yeah, not a challenge, opportunity. And I think anything that often feels like a challenge, it's usually just a moment to stretch ourselves, right? Like it's why does it feel challenging? Because if it's just a human nature thing, it's not like global warming because it's monsooning here in Brooklyn right now. But if it's a human challenge, that's often the opportunity to stretch yourself and grow into a new space and get better at what you do.
Uh, what you're saying has resonated so much because if anyone knows me, I believe self awareness, especially in our industry, unlocks our curiosity, unlocks innovation. And I think as creatives, and to hear such a phenomenal creative leader say, you have to have a level of awareness of yourself to know, I really don't know, or to check yourself because that arrogancy can, you like, I know, but your arrogance can trap you up and
Mhm.
stop the creativity and solving that business problem for a client. So to be aware of that. Because
Yes.
I want my creators to be a little arrogant. I want a little like I do because I want to win. I mean, I
Yeah.
need that swag, but I think to be in tune with yourself to know when to check it and
Yeah.
when to lean out is powerful. I have two more questions I want to ask you because I'm nosy and I just
Well,
want to know all about you. What are some key lessons you've learned that you wish you had known when you started? I know we've been talking about people pouring into you, but what is the lessons like? "Ah, I could have got here sooner if I knew this."
I'm just going to because that I'm enough. There earlier on, there were all of these bells and whistles that I thought that I needed to attach to my person in order to be successful. But when I look back at that moment, I look at this moment here, like my thought pattern is pretty much the same. Like I want to be in this, or I want it to be in this industry because I see it as a powerful tool to connect with people. I landed because I went to design school first, right? So I could have been an art director. I landed on copywriting because I understand exactly how powerful words are, right? Like word can cut you down to the white meat, but they can also build you up, right? And so I knew why I was here, but because I was internalizing a lot of the pushback, I thought that I needed to do things in addition to just doing the work. And so I think I wish I would have learned that earlier, but also that's my journey, right? Like it happened. And so now when I see someone else going through that, the level of empathy that I have is a lot stronger than I probably would have had 15 years ago. And so I would say that's a big learning and work smarter, like work smarter. I think that wake until fate narrative that I internalized is I have a bad memory, but I remember the bad things. Where I was like, the things that I remember that are negative, those become my inflection points to do something to like switch. And so working smarter, not harder has been the thing that I've really embraced, especially over the last, obviously 7 years, where you're in these meetings and you feel like you need to say something because if you don't say something, you're not showing your value. And I've learned I'm actually a really good thinker, like actually being confident enough to take the pause and wait and let people think and then respond versus I feel like I need to say something. Those have been the two things that have like really shaped or shifted how I show up in the world and how I like develop other people who are around me, especially when I'm managing. Real, you don't need to say it. You can take a beat, right?
Yeah.
Like the pregnant pause has been something that I've like, especially as I identify as an introvert, whatever that is, but being comfortable with the silence has been something that's been really transformative. And for anyone listening, we had Kat Gordon, the founder of the 3% Conference,
Yeah.
on the podcast, and she was talking about the rise of introverts. And that was one of the things that we had talked about was this idea of the pause, right? Actually like sitting and like reflecting and thinking about what you say before you say it, because our industry has rewarded the extroverts. It's rewarded the outspoken people at any cost. So I think like really embracing working smarter, not harder, and defining it for myself, because that becomes a really good metric of success. Is this definition something that I created, or am I embodying what someone else has laid out? And so working smarter for me has been a really strategic endeavor. It's something that's ongoing. I catch myself slipping sometimes and I'm like, yo, why am I so tired? But it's been one of my North Stars over the last couple of years. And so I wish I would have learned those two things earlier on in my career.
I love that. A pregnant pause, working smarter, not harder. Where, what's next? We know the podcast. People want to find you. Tune in. If you haven't started listening, listeners, please listen to Mixed Company. Doesn't matter what
Uh,
industry you in, you have to hear. But what's next? Where can we see? Or
so the podcast is still going. We record differently now. We used to do every 2 weeks. Now it's more editorial. But between Kai and myself, we've been doing a lot more consulting, especially when it comes to the intersection of creativity and diversity and what that looks like. And so that's next. I'm a freelancer consulting. So, you know, I take things that excite me. I think that's been something that's felt really rewarding over the last couple of years is saying, I don't want to do that.
it's freedom.
Yeah, I just wrapped the project. So I'm just like, all right, what's next? So yeah, between that, the podcast, creating, that's next. I'm just open. I'm like in a really weird, we have a mutual coach and it's like, I've just been embracing the foundation that I've laid for myself, which feels very weird for my immigrant mind of not like
Yes.
having a laid out plan. But yeah, it's been especially like the last couple of months, the foundation has just been like blooming things that have been planted years ago or months ago. And so I'm just reaping the rewards and taking meetings, kissing babies, shaking hands, the things.
Uh, I'm glad. I think it's in a testament of the legacy and the work you've built over the years in this industry to be able to take that pause, because not everyone has that. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your insights and experience, taking a moment to be with us today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Changemaker table. And to all our listeners at the Changemaker table, remember, change starts with a vision and a single step. Keep pushing boundaries and keep making a difference. Until next time.
Love it. Thanks for having me.